So the thing about the difference in the solubility of water versus alcohols is it's all about the OH groups. Hydrogen and oxygen have different electronegativities. Oxygen is much closer to an octet, so it pulls hydrogen's electrons toward itself. So oxygen becomes a little negative, and the hydrogens become a little positive, and that creates the polarity, like we talk about in first year. But what's also there are these unshared pairs on the oxygen. So if I have another water molecule over here, same thing happens here. Oxygen's a little negative, hydrogen's a little positive. And there's not only the attraction between the plus and minus here, but there's also an attraction between the slightly positive hydrogen and the unshared pair, because unshared pairs are very negative areas. And so that's why water is so polar. It's got two different OH bonds, and that's all there is in the molecule. And so it makes it very, very polar. So if you have a plus and minus, ionic compound like sodium plus 1, chlorine minus 1, water can really attack it and pull the crystal apart, and it's very soluble. We're going to find when we talk more about bonding and polarity in AP that a compound like CH4, even though it might have polar bonds because carbon is more electronegative, and so the hydrogens are a little slightly positive and the carbon slightly negative, but because it's a symmetrical molecule and all these forces are pulling in the same direction, it actually cancels out. So in the end, even though the bonds are polar, the overall molecule from the outside appears to be totally nonpolar, no charge. So it would not be able to attract anything in an ionic compound. There's no plus and minus overall end to the outside of the molecule. So this is an alcohol molecule. This is methanol or a methyl alcohol. And it has a polar end, just like water. It has, the uneven sharing of the electron. It's got the slightly positive hydrogen, slightly negative oxygen, and shared pairs on the oxygen. So this end is very polar. But then you have this other end that's sort of similar to the CH4. So it's fairly nonpolar, except for this CO bond. Now there's a different electronegativity there, so it's not really a symmetrical end, but it's nowhere near as polar as the OH end. And so this alcohol molecule, because of these carbons that it has in it, are going to have a less polar end and then a very polar end. And so it just has different solubility rules than water does.